Justin Simeon, Haunted Mansion, the failed movie, and a weird set of takes he had as he lost his role as the head honcho for Lando. First things first, this movie bombed at the box office. It made $24 million this weekend on a budget of $150 million. Not good. Not good at all. And he had a lot of weird takes regarding this.
He got an interview with The Hollywood Reporter that is titled, "To be in Hollywood is to be gaslit constantly. Yep. Too black or too queer for some and not enough for others. The Dear White People filmmaker gets real on those Bob Iger comments."
Just look,
Media is such a joke.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem.
Simeon does work that regularly generates critical adoration, but not always paydays.
Shocking.
He's grown used to the uncertainty, but suggests that Hollywood is due for a hard reset.
Well, here's the funny thing about that. If Hollywood did a hard reset, the people who aren't making money would be the ones that were gone. One of the things that I found really interesting is that whether we're talking about Dial of Destiny or this movie or a lot of other films recently, especially from Disney, the critics have been very willing to criticize movies. Disney fans are going to be Disney fans. The Dial of Destiny audience score was high. The Haunted Mansion audience score is high. The Haunted Mansion critic score is 42%. So what do, right? Normally you'd say, well, if the critics hate it, then I'm probably going to love it. Do you actually believe you're going to love the Haunted Mansion movie from Disney that came out in July and not October? Why the hell didn't this movie come out in October? First of all.
Yeah, that's true. That doesn't make much sense.
But like they don't line up, and the critics have seemed more willing to criticize these Disney movies lately than the audience, because Disney fans are such rabid, a Disney fan's going to love whatever Disney shovels down their face. Whatever slop Disney throws at them, people are going to be like, yes, Mr. Iger, I'd love some more.
But nobody is watching the new Star Wars content.
No. Or Marvel. Like, the Secret Invasion score is minuscule. Yeah. Like a 4 out of 10. Nobody likes it. It's not doing well.
His take here just doesn't make sense. He thinks that he was replaced as the director for Lando by Disney for being too black or too queer.
Which is clearly not possible.
Meanwhile, he was replaced by Donald Glover. Yeah. So it clearly wasn't your race that was the issue. He just said, I'm attached, I think, but I don't really know. The last thing I was told was that they loved it, but needed to put a pin in it until they could figure out everybody's availability. I haven't investigated further, but I'm not an idiot. I'm not alone in that experience. But I can't help but wonder, am I too black? Am I too queer? And people just don't want to say that? Because it seems like I develop things with these companies and they just never happen for reasons unknown.
That is
so it must be because I'm black and gay, right?
It's a persecution complex. And if you are wondering if he thinks about those things too much, this was his response to him finding out that Donald Glover got the role. Says, Donald is a national treasure. Glad he and Steven get to carry the character forward their way. Can't wait to see it. Rooting for everybody black.
Right. Imagine the outrage, though, if he got replaced by a white guy.
He's very clearly very heavily focused on race. When he talked about why the movie would be... Also, before I even get to that, Reimagine Tomorrow tells us that it's not possible to be too black or too gay at Disney. It's literally impossible. It is not. Well, it's not possible.
The interviewer said, "You say you wonder about being too black or too gay for these corporations." Yeah. But I've also heard you speak about getting negative feedback from audiences about not being black or gay enough.
You can't win. And it's a double-edged sword. The other thing that's funny about this, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's he also says, I don't know how to make things that aren't personal. He basically talks about how he has to make self-inserts and that he doesn't know how to actually be creative in the way that somebody who has to write about things that aren't their life, their world of view or their lived experience. Because he talks about, he says, more importantly than the movie, he says more important goals were related to race and culture. He says, basically saying that the movie had to be this and this. It had nothing to do with telling a good story. It was about making it black. It was about making it queer. That's not a good story. That's not telling a good story.
Also, he said that he wanted Haunted Mansion to be as black as possible.
Yes.
And in reference to still being contractually obligated to promote Haunted Mansion while all of the actors and writers can't do the same thing, he said, that sucks because I know how that might look to some people, but I also know how it feels to fight for something that I believe in within the very system that I'm fighting. I am a black gay man in America, so it's not the first time by any stretch. But look at me, I'm making this $100+ million movie. That's ancestors' wildest dream stuff.
So you're proof that the system has come a long way, but you're fighting the system.
Like, I'm sure when the slaves were emancipated, it was so that you could make Haunted Mansion for hundreds of millions of dollars in 2023 and not make any of the money back.
He says, as a filmmaker, I have an incredible desire to bring the history of New Orleans and specifically black culture to the movie. This is the birthplace of jazz and the best food in the country. The first thing you should be saying is, my goal is to tell a good story. To tell a good story.
Even if you don't mean it,
yeah,
honestly.
Exactly.
If your real goals are about race and identity, yeah, you could at least pay lip service to wanting to make a good movie that's enjoyable for people.
He also criticized the original. He says it was a kid's movie that came out at a time when I was not a kid. It didn't necessarily speak to me. So he doesn't really have any attachment to the original, and Disney doesn't care about that. But it is just further proof that what you do now in Hollywood is you take a system that is, by all means, extremely politically correct, extremely focused on race, gender, and sexuality, and then still somehow use that as the weapon against the people who are trying to promote it for you when your movie doesn't work. You're not at odds with the studios. You're at odds with the audience who just doesn't want to watch movies based around these concepts. They just want to see good stories get told, and they're not getting, like, look at Barbie. Barbie is making tons of money in spite of all that stuff because they kept the focus on the marketing away from these topics.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of the studios, he responded to Bob Iger's comments, which are that the SAG strike has unrealistic expectations, and Bob Iger was also accused of being the one that said, you know, we're just going to starve them out, basically. We're going to wait until people lose their houses. Mm-hmm. He said, I just keep going back to the irony. It's a company built around a talking mouse. Unrealistic is kind of y'all's thing. It just sucks that his words don't align with the reality that we've all faced. It's a terrible feeling to try to make art to give people a sense of escapism. That's not what you're doing.
That's the opposite of what
when you're in a constant state of trauma. We need to pay our bills and not feel as if we're in constant economic strife. What's so unrealistic is that a system built like that can just keep going and going and going and not exhaust itself. We're exhausted.
So are we, dude.
I mean, he's saying this after Dear White People didn't make any money. It just got a bunch of critical acclaim.
And what they've never learned is that strong critical acclaim doesn't actually equate to success.
Yeah.
Even strong audience acclaim from Disney anymore doesn't seem to equate to success because Disney fans are so hardened that they don't go outside the bubble, right? So the score on this movie might be 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, but that's because the only people that went to see it were die-hard Disney fans who are going to give it a high score no matter what the movie is.
Mm-hmm. He also talked about how Orange is the New Black actors were talking about the fact that they didn't get any residuals for the show from Netflix. He said, if they had that issue, it makes sense that we did. Then I realized, oh, it's weird that the viewership data was kept from me. Now I've sort of figured out through my own means that our show, Dear White People, was more popular and successful than we were ever made to think it was. Did I get bamboozled? You can't escape that feeling. It might have had a lot of viewership. It might have had great reviews from the people who liked it. That doesn't mean that it made money, and that doesn't mean you're deserving of a certain paycheck just because you felt strongly about it.
Also, like, the residual thing is just getting funnier and funnier when you hear it from actors that got strong upfront paychecks to begin with. Like,
right. It's
just ridiculous, especially in an age where, do the unions really do much for an industry where there's so many safeguards put in place for like in most of working America, right? There's so many laws in place related to safety for employees. Like, do unions serve the same purpose that they served 50, 60, 70 years ago? Not really, not in the same context. And somebody like this, look, they're not going to tell you the streaming numbers, not because I do agree with who Andrew Schultz was saying, like, look, they're not telling you the streaming numbers because they're trying to keep you out of the money you deserve. They're trying to prevent you from seeing the streaming numbers because the numbers are so bad on most of these shows.
But his assumption is just that it's so popular that they don't want me to know, so they don't have to pay me because I'm black and gay and they hate me for my skin color. Yep. They also asked him, did you see an increase in phone calls in 2020 because his work deals with race and racism? He said, I saw the interest dip and rise again. The expectation is that I should be so happy that people pay attention when they do. It's subtle, and I know that it might be important to the person that's in front of me, but the person that they work for, who I may never see, I don't know. The proof will be in the pudding, and half the time, the pudding does not show up. I'd call it a mindfuck. To be in Hollywood is to be gaslit constantly.
They're such pleasant people to be around.
I just don't even know how to respond to that.
But at the end of the day, what it is you made a movie that failed.
The guy that made Reservation Dogs?
Yeah.
What was it that he said about his show? Like, he said that it got snubbed for awards.
Yeah, well, he was mad that the show didn't win any awards.
And that it deserved it because of its message, not because it was popular, which it was.
It was popular. I loved Reservation Dogs. It was great.
It's giving the same energy here.
Yeah. But here, at the end of the day, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sexual orientation, regardless of the color of your skin, you made a $150 million movie that made
$20 million on its opening weekend.
That made $24 million at home and $9 million overseas. This movie is going to lose the studio hundreds of millions of dollars. And
it's like they're on a playground and the adults are watching.
Yes.
You know?
At the end of the day, if I don't care if you were like I'm trying to think of like who is the ideal person that I would want to give work to. I don't care if you're the greatest human being on earth and I idolize you. If I give you $150 million and you make me $30 million, you're not getting another job ever. You shouldn't.
Right.
Like, judging by the laws of actual capitalism and the way things are supposed to work, you should not be rehired because the market says so.
We've got a super chat from High Voltage 75. Hey, Brett. Hey, Mary. Awesome party. Good tunes. Good brew. Good buddies. I feel great, man. I don't know, man. I hate my father. I hate my life, but I feel great. You guys are great. I'm going to go pick a fight.
Let's go. Also, look.
To answer what you were saying, why does he think he's deserving of more money after he's just wasted over $100 million? He said what he hopes will come out of the strikes is we understand that especially in a capitalist system, there are going to be white straight men at the top who hold the power. They need to understand they don't generate the power. Artists do. You can't separate the labor from the fruits of their labor.
Yes,
we're willing to work to over-deliver because we love it. But there is a limit where human beings who read how much money that we make is generating for you. It's starting to give sharecropper. It's starting to give Marie Antoinette. You have to work with us or we're not working. We'll find a different way to do our art.
And nobody will watch
you were
it.
working with the studios because they gave you capital. Yeah. So if you cared that much about storytelling on your own terms, you would have been finding that different way to do your art this whole time. You would have been doing indie projects, which now Sarah Silverman is wringing her hands about.
They always think that they hold all the power without realizing that it's the people that give you the money to make the art that give you. Barbie's proof of this. It's not the movie that made the money. It's the marketing that made the money. Right? Yeah. The movie's fine, sure, but it's the marketing that brought people in to see this movie.
So thank Warner Brothers and Mattel for that.
Yeah,
you know?
You don't thank Greta Gerwig. I mean, thank Greta Gerwig
honestly,
as much as...
it has nothing to do with Greta Gerwig.
Yes. I mean, you can thank Greta Gerwig as much as like if you love the movie, sure. But if you want to thank, the success, if you want to thank the people regardless of responsible for the film's success, you thank Warner Brothers and whoever they hired to do the PR for the film because that's what made the money. Your movie isn't going to make any money. Your movie's not going to get to make any money if they don't advertise it and put it out there for sale. Like I said, the only people going to watch this movie are people that love Disney. Mm-hmm. That's it. And they don't love you. They love Disney.
Well, you were thinking about watching it. Are you going to see it now?
I almost went and saw it this weekend. I will say somebody in the chat pointed after how they ruined Star Wars. They deserve all they're getting. My favorite was this article from when I was talking about this from Heroic Hollywood. It says, the future of Star Wars looks brighter than ever. Well, that's the fakest headline I've read all day. It says, during Star Wars Celebration, Lucasfilm made some exciting announcements for the future of the franchise. At the event, Kathleen Kennedy announced Dave Filoni and James Mangold are all set to direct their own Star Wars movies. Nobody cares anymore, dude. It's dead. The brand is dead. People are mildly interested in Ahsoka. That's
so
it.
It's good news that they're just generating more content. That's the good news?
Yeah.
Not that the content is going to be good?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
A High Voltage 75, was that a Wayne's World 2 reference? Not a Wayne's World 1 reference? Because I'm not, it's not sticking with me today. If it's a Wayne's World 2 reference, I've seen Wayne's World 2 far less than I've seen Wayne's World 1.
Both were good.
Yes. I mean, the first one is just a classic to me. The second one I've only seen a couple of times. But
let's go to Super Chats.
No, actually, no, there's one other thing here. Look, the fact of the matter at the end of the day, like, you build a reputation based off the amount of money you've brought in the past. Christopher Nolan was allowed to fumble on Tenet because of COVID and because of his past success as a director, right? Hollywood at its core...
No, he was given a second chance because he's a white male.
But Hollywood at its core should be the most colorblind of industries, because at the end of the day, what they should want is a strong return on their investment. That's not something to criticize. That should be something to compliment, because if you are actually confident in your abilities as a director, not just as a director of somebody who wants to make something that's a self-insert that speaks to like 19 people on Twitter and a bunch of people hanging out in Tent City in Portland, like that's one thing. But if you're talking about having confidence in your strong ability to direct a film that will speak to large swaths of the population, you want a studio that believes in return on investment, not a studio that believes in identity politics. That's not what these people are saying. What they're saying is, I want to both get the budget, get the capital, but not be responsible for the success that it needs to earn it. And that's annoying. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.